In just less than 6 hours, a new year will begin. 2013 will be upon us. And most of us or a lot of us are thinking about New Year's resolutions, things we're going to do better in 2013, things we're not going to do in 2013. And most of the time, we make resolutions for ourselves. We don't make them for other people. But today I want to break that mold. I have a resolution for a larger group of people. I want to give a resolution to our elected leaders in Washington: President, Vice President, Senate, and House. Here's the resolution. I want you to repeat this, elected leaders. I resolve in 2013 to do my job. We are less than 6 hours away from the deadline for the Fiscal Cliff, for the Bush tax cuts to be expired, for the sequestration to happen, the cutting of $500 billion from defense and $500 billion from social and entitlement type programs across the board, the alternative minimum tax going back, and the break on your payroll taxes, the reduction that you had. So your check's going to be smaller, your taxes are going to be higher, and we've got major issue. The CBO said if we fail to deal with this, we could end up back into a deeper recession with losing 1 million jobs, and we can go on. Now, I say resolve to do the job this year because this Congress and this president have failed to do their job. This whole fiscal cliff, most of what's being argued about right now stems from 2011. The debt ceiling fight back then. The whole sequestration, they wanted to fight about the debt ceiling. And by the way, just a little thing on the debt ceiling, that's our ability to pay the bills we've already committed to. That's not adding more spending. That's what we've already said. We're going to pay these bills, and we have the ability to do it. But in 2011, they couldn't come to a deal, so they finally said, hey, I know what we'll do. We're going to make ourselves do what we're supposed to do. We're going to twist our arms. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up a super committee that's going to come up with an idea, and it's going to pass between the House and the Senate. But if it doesn't, if they can't come up with an answer and we can't come up with an answer, then we're going to make it so bad that it will keep us from making this mistake. We'll cut huge chunk from the military in an indiscriminate way that'll hurt our defense. We'll cut a huge amount from the social programs and the domestic effects that will devastate people. And that way, we'd never do that. We'd make sure there was a decision made. We are hours away from 2013, and it didn't happen yet. Now, I've listened to partisans on both sides, blaming the president, blaming Harry Reid, blaming Speaker Boehner, blaming the Republicans, blaming the Tea Party. And I often get criticized when I say both parties are at blame. Oh, the Republicans are more obstructionist, or the Democrats haven't done anything. Look, folks, it is both parties. Part of the economic situation, part of the tax code, and the social programs were put in place by both parties before. But in this case, let's look at what's going on now. We've been dealing with this fiscal cliff. We've known it's coming. It's not a surprise. So let's see what's going on. Republicans had been insisting on no change in tax rate. The president had been insisting that only deal would happen if we raise the taxes, or we stop the Bush tax cuts from staying on, take them away permanently, so that the tax rate of anybody 250, any family 250,000 or above, their taxes would go back to what it was before. Democrats are saying you can't touch Social Security, you can't touch Medicaid, you can't touch Medicare. But let's look at what happened. The House, controlled by the Republicans, put forward bills on how to deal with this. Nothing from the Senate. The president put out proposals. Now, the House put forth a bill that they knew the Senate would reject, that they knew the president would reject. The president's first offer was, in my opinion, a joke. There wasn't any real spending cuts in there. The House would have rejected it. Both sides can claim, I did this, I did that, except for the Senate. The Senate did not put a bill, a specific bill, to deal with any of this. The only thing they did was pass a bill that would extend the Bush tax cuts up to anyone up to $250,000. That's all they did. The Senate hasn't even passed a budget in 4 years. Now, I was talking to someone the other day who showed me an article about how the procedural things, if they couldn't get 60 votes, the filibuster, and how it would have been just an empty gesture if the House wouldn't agree with it, or if they couldn't get the 60 votes, then do an empty gesture. Do your job. Put a budget on the table. Put a bill on the table. We started to see movement. The president said, we'll say let's make that not 250, but it will happen at 450. Families that make $450,000 a year and above would have their tax raises raised. The House seemed to be saying, yeah, we're going to go that way. We might bite the bullet and do this. Lindsey Graham said it's going to happen. The president's going to win a hollow victory. He was very upset about it, but he said it would happen. The president comes out today and gives a speech about how it's almost there, we're almost there, and then it seems like he spanked the Republicans in the House. I don't know why he did that. It was unnecessary, it was unhelpful, and I'm sure it rattled cages over there in the House. Now, their job is not to worry about being insulted by somebody and then, now I'm not going to do this. Their job is to get the job done. Vote on this, get this stopped. If we get a deal before in the next couple hours, it'll only be a temporary deal. It'll only be a partial deal. They'll have to debate it in the next year. And honestly, if nothing happens tonight, the new Congress convenes on the 5th. There's going to be a shakeup in the market. There's going to be problems. But we probably will be able, if the new Congress comes in and gets right to work at fixing this, we might be okay. But if most of the new Congress is the same as the old Congress, I'm not saying how anything's being done here. Folks, the problem is we think compromise is a dirty word. We say, you've got to do what I want you to do. I don't care which side of the political spectrum you're on. People sign pledges. People make, I will not do this. And we, the people, are telling our congressional representatives or our senators, don't you dare move. Don't you dare give an inch. Well, folks, this country is made up of a myriad of positions on things. If you walk down your street and were to ask every single person on your street how they would resolve this, that, or the other thing, I guarantee you get 3, 4, 5 different ideas. You cannot have, in a multifaceted society, one answer. And the other thing is, we try to take it all in one bite. We got to take everything in one bite. And that's never how things have changed in our country, almost never. We've taken a little nibble here. We've changed a little nibble there. And we work our way up till we get everything or most of everything that we want, if that's what this country wants. I'm disgusted with everybody in Washington. We elected them to do a job. And now, almost a year and a half later, the country's in jeopardy because they can't get their job done. Partially because we are demanding that they stick to certain things, but partially because there's no consequence for them. What is the consequence? When you have a senator who missed serving for over a year because of illness or illegal stuff, and he gets reelected while he's not even serving, we keep putting the same people back. And then we sit back and don't say anything. We don't do anything. Have you called your senator and representative? Have you emailed your senator and representative about what should be done, about the tax cuts, about sequestration, about any of this? Have you spoke to any of them? And how can you expect them to do what we want them to do? We have to tell Congress and tell the president to stop playing political games. And look, I know a lot of you listening to me are partisans, and you're going to point the finger at the other side. I know that you're going to pick up factual information. This is the problem. Little bits of truth and make that the whole thing. You're going to focus on what they did wrong and not focus on what your side didn't do. If we want this country to move forward, if we want our country to have success, we have got to stop pointing fingers at each other and start finding ways to compromise. They had the grand bargain. They had Simpson Bowles. They had another, at least one or two more plans that all they had to do was tweak a little bit. But when you're insulting each other, when you're trying to get the best position, and when you're demanding that you will not change these things, we're never going to get anything done. I would love to see a deal done that gets us a little bit over so we can get into the next year and fix everything. I'm not hopeful at all. More importantly, I'm not hopeful in the next year, for the next Congress, the 113th, to do anything to fix it properly. There's no penalty. There's no skin in the game from our elected officials. If we keep electing them when they keep doing the wrong thing, they're not going to change. I said before when we talked about this that what we really should do is put a trigger. I would say they've got till March. I'll give them 3 months to figure out the Bush tax cuts, the sequestration, the payroll tax, the unemployment, all these things. Work out a good deal in March. If it's not done by the end of March, one of two things happens. Either everybody gets kicked out of office, we hold a special election and replace everybody. That's not really practical, but there'd be skin in the game. But here's one that's actually could happen, although they'd have to vote on it, and that is that every single one of them, their tax rate would go to 90% on every bit of money they make, whether they got it as a dividend or an investment or inheritance or earned it from their salary in Washington. It doesn't make a difference. Every bit of it is taxed at 90%. And it's taxed at 90% every time they do this. Maybe they do something then. All right, that's my little rant today on the Fiscal Cliff. You can hear us, another voice, on Mondays, 1 to 2 p.m. on Spin FM 103.3 in Greenville, Greer, and Spartanburg. You can also go to canigetawordin.com and find us there. Or you can subscribe to our iTunes podcast channel, Another Voice with Jason and Eric. I also want to remind you that on January 8th, the day after our next show, a brand new show will be starting on Spin FM called Occupy the Microphone. Now, this is going to be progressive and liberal talk radio. And I urge you to listen to them. They're going to be on 1 to 2 p.m. on Tuesdays to get a different perspective on all the subjects that we talk about. All right, here's wishing you a very happy new year, and let's make 2013 count.